Hello and welcome everyone. I'm glad to receive your presence today, which celebrates literature, art, and all its glory. Orange City Literature Fest is back, and I am Priyanka Sharma, your moderator for the session, The Ocean's Own and the Story of Ancient India. For today's session, we have the author, Ms Nandini Sen Gupta. I would love to welcome you, ma'am. Thank you for being with us today. So, for her, I've always said this that from a child whose interest in books was prompted by her mother, because she said that there are no good books or bad books, only the badly written ones or nicely written ones. I personally celebrate this author because she doesn't only write about historical fiction, but she's also a person who has narrative way of writing history today. So Nandini ma'am, I this is second time I'm going to be in conversation with you, and I have many questions. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. I'm so happy to be here, and I would like to thank Orange City Lit Fest for giving me this opportunity. And this is the third time I think I'm
Oh,
speaking on this platform, and I'm so happy, so honored, and I'm particularly happy to have Priyanka as my moderator for this evening because she is just simply superb, and I look forward to a very, very engaging conversation with her.
thank you so much, ma'am. For my audience to begin with, I would like to tell you that apart from her credits, the best-selling The Blue Horse and Other Amazing Animals from Indian History, which not only debuted in November 2020 but was also shortlisted for Authors Award 2021 in children fiction category. Today, the one that we're speaking about, The Ocean's Own, is also to her credit, which is third volume of Sen Gupta ma'am's Gupta trilogy. So her audience loved the first two parts, The King Within and The Poisoned Heart, and were excited when the third part was revealed. I was going through the comments and everything. So it's a pleasure to have you with us. But before I start asking questions to you, I have something. So, as we're celebrating your final book in the enthralling Gupta Empire trilogy, The Ocean's Own, I would like to read what the reader has written about the book, which largely contributes to the question I have to put. May I?
Yes, of course.
So they said that the three books in the trilogy focus on three different emperors, and this third volume, The Ocean's Own, is about the Emperor Samudragupta. He has all the things that Nandini Sen Gupta's fans have come to expect from her book, a wonderful start filled with mystery and intrigue, unknown assassins trying to do bad things, palace intrigue, beautiful friendships, wonderful description of sword fights and battle scenes, passionate romance, and last but not the least, the amazing strong woman character. Nandini ma'am, before I even ask my question, how do you feel of your audience writing such elaborate comedy?
As long as it doesn't create any problem out, Priyanka, I'm so happy that you mentioned the women in the Ocean Zone. And while the three books, The King Within, The Poisoned Heart, and The Ocean Zone, are about three very powerful kings, samrats, emperors, but the fulcrum of the stories, the real dramatic core of the stories are women characters. And some of these women characters are obviously historical characters. They actually lived in classical India. Some, of course, are my imagination. That is true for all the three books. And in the Ocean Zone, there are three very, very powerful women characters. The first, of course, is Samudragupta's mother, Kumara Devi. She is a historical character, very powerful woman character. His wife, Datta Devi, also a historical character. And the third character who enters this little, sort of tableau of characters is Angai, a princess from Kanchi, the kingdom of Kanchi, a southern princess. And she is a fictional character. So there are two very strong historical characters and there's one very strong fictional character. And these three women more or less sort of define the drama in the story
Okay.
of Samudragupta.
That's elaborate, and I think it's such a nice balance to not only have fiction but also a great deal of what has been there in the past. So like I'm intrigued to ask again. Like that was the first thought when I read this comment. How do you see when your audience picks the right part? Like a writer writes, of course, they want this to be picked up, but how does it feel when someone picks the right hint and they write about it? Because I have never seen someone. This comment was huge. This was two-pager, and this was just one part of it. So, how do you feel about your audience picking up the hints that you drop them for, and they look up to these? Like you said, you like the mention, but it's the audience who pick that your characters of women are strong.
I'm so happy, when a comment like this comes along, it really makes my day as a writer because, there is one point that I keep making when I talk about the Ocean Zone and Samudragupta, is that I have been able to write these characters, very strong women characters, because that age was like that. Because I was writing about classical India, which is a very, very strong, economically strong, liberal, culturally superior kind of period, that it allowed me to write women characters who were also like that, completely
Correct.
unapologetic about what they want from life. Very, very strong, extremely focused, and never ever giving the king, the emperor, any quarters. That you may be
Yeah.
emperor, but so what? My womanhood and my femininity is just as important. That this kind of position I could take because that age allowed me to take it. Because classical India was like that, and that is very empowering. When I look back, that is very empowering to know.
Classical India sounds so interesting when you're speaking about it. It's hard to focus on questions, and it's very enticing to get lost when you're speaking. Okay, so having mentioned that, and I could see that you narrated, and it's in the comment also, that you have a very peculiar way of writing war sequences in the narrative. So tell me, how do you approach them? Like you told me that you want them to be larger than life, but at the same time, you approach it with authenticity. So yeah.
So, what, I'm so glad you're asking this question, really, because um, wars in ancient India, you have to understand that while medieval India, if you're looking at medieval India, it becomes much easier, because there are paintings, there are actual paintings that depict the war. So, so there are Mughal miniatures, there are Kangra miniatures, there's so many paintings that show the war itself. And so you know exactly what happened and how
Yeah.
it happened. Ancient India does not have that. There are one or two murals, the Hathi Kumpha mural in Udaygiri caves and all that. One or two examples are there. But other than that, mostly you have to imagine. You have to imagine how things happen.
Correct.
So how did I do that? Because for Samudragupta, of course, I went by the Prayag Prashasti. There is this very detailed description of Samudragupta, of the kingdoms that he conquered, and so on, by his friend Harisena, who is a character in the King Within, in the Ocean Zone. He's Samudragupta's best friend. So Harisena is a historical character. He is the man who wrote this inscription on an Ashokan pillar, which now stands in Prayag, or what was earlier called Allahabad. And the Prashasti is called Prayag Prashasti. That gives you a detailed description of the route that Samudragupta took. Right? He went
Correct.
from
Right.
Magadh, which was, in the north, on and down, he hugged the coast, went down the eastern coast, and finally ended up in Kanchipuram, which is where I am today. This Pondicherry, Tamil Nadu, Mahabalipuram area, all of this was part of the ancient kingdom of Kanchi, which was ruled by the Pallava kings. So that description came from historical sources. Now, how to describe the wars? Because you see, the kind of weapons they used were also very, very different. They used the ati sword, they used the khadaga, broadsword, they used the parasu, which was like an axe, a battle axe, and so different types of weapons that they used. Again, Harisena comes in handy because he mentions the kind of battle scars that Samudragupta got, throughout his various conquests. So these are the weapons that were used in the battle. But how do you know exactly how the battle was done. Here again, I went back to some of my friends in the Indian Army. I would
Mm-hmm.
sketch out the battle sequences and bounce it off them and ask them, does this work? Do you think as a battle strategy this would work? And one or two of them, they are also students of military history. So they would be able to give me, interesting inputs that maybe no, you should, when you're saying that he's trying to decapitate someone, it should go at this angle and not at this angle and so on, So that kind of research helped me to get the whole visual part of those wars, and you have to understand that Samudragupta waged many, 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 many wars, and I have only taken, just a handful. There are many, many wars that he waged, and he remained unvanquished. I
Yeah.
think this is an amazing record. I mean, people compare him with Napoleon, but they shouldn't, because this is a man who never lost a battle.
Lost. Yeah.
Amazing track record.
I mean, as much as iconic that would be to imagine, but the amount of effort you're putting in to make sure that, oh God, I right from the fact that you don't not only connect with people who understand strategy making, but also who share a little bit of connect with history. I think that celebrates the credibility you bring on the table when you're writing something like that. That also, like, I am hooked. Please speak more about strategy making, and please tell me more about what swords you were speaking about. I would love to know more, please, if you have anything.
So one little bit of information I would like to give right here is that in ancient India, where I am sitting right now, I'm sitting in Pondicherry. In ancient India, this part of the country was known for its steel making. So,
Okay.
in medieval Europe, for instance, Toledo was very well known for steel and all that. In ancient India, South India used to make excellent quality steel, which was used for weapons and various kinds of weapons. Now, what kind of weapons they used and the kind of battle formations, I've mentioned, for instance, the Chakravyuha and so on. All these references are there in our epics as well. So in the Mahabharata, for instance, you hear about the Chakravyuha, and there are other battle formations that you come across even in other sources, like Arthashastra gives you details and so on. So when you look at literary and primary sources, sources going back to that age, literary sources and so on, you get a very good idea of the kind of weapons that were used. Now, this particular book, The Ocean Zone, is very interesting because I have introduced a martial art. When we say Indian martial art, people talk about Kalaripattu. Kalaripattu is very well known and so on. But what is less well known was that in Tamil Nadu, there is a very well known, well established martial art tradition, and that is called Silambam. And
Okay.
there are mentions of Silambam traditions in Sangam literature as well, going
Oh.
back even further than the Gupta era.
Mm-hmm.
And I researched Silambam and I used that in the book in a very sort of dramatic way to bring out the character of the southern princess, Angai.
Lovely.
Uh, and so she becomes the vehicle with which I use to introduce Silambam into the story.
I really like how your character, like you use elements so particularly. Like even if you have to introduce a character, you would use something that would be an uncharted territory. Like I would not only know about the princess, but I would have a hook about something that I previously did not know, and I should know about this. Interesting very much, because like I said, even simplest things which are overlooked, I would say, or sometimes not given enough attention, you're using them to the complete potential. This I can say as a person who doesn't really know much about book writing, but now I know why your
Yeah.
audience picks you perfectly. Like, yeah, you have so much to give away in the treasure. Like I can pick anywhere and I would be very happy. Having said that, I really liked how you really know your geography well. So I see that you treat your geography likewise in the writing. So would you mind telling me about the mentions of terrains, like you mentioned Patliputra, Kanchi, and the march through central India altogether?
Uh, So yes, so terrain is very interesting because descriptions of Patliputra, particularly, I had great fun researching it and writing about it. One word here, very quickly. I always like to give the primary source from where I
Please.
get my information.
Yeah.
So when I was researching Patliputra, one of the primary sources that I used were the accounts written by Chinese monks
Okay.
like Fahian. So Fahian was there. He was touring India during the reign of Chandragupta Vikramaditya, who was Samudragupta's son. And he was left behind. He's, of course, not the only one. There are several other Chinese monks who have left behind very detailed accounts of what Patliputra looked like. So
Okay.
if you look, if you read the book, you will find that I have given a very, very detailed description of Patliputra. There are two parts of the city. There is Purba, there is Apara. It's almost like, downtown, the hip and the posh areas and the not so posh areas, and and there are taverns with people, just like today you have pubs with people and all that, and lots of flowers. The Patliputra was known as, it had another name called Kusumapura, Kusumpur,
Right.
which means city of flowers. So lots of flowers, lots of different types of flowers. You have to be very careful describing those flowers, because a lot of the flowers we see today are not indigenous flowers. So, for instance, the rose is not an Indian flower. And in ancient India, for instance, you would find flowers like the lotus, which was very common, and you would find flowers like marigold, again very common. You would find flowers like, ketaki, the white
Yeah.
Pirangipani flowers. Mogra was very common and worn in the, people used to wear it in their hair, just like they do today. Even today, if you come to the south, you will find every single woman in the morning, they will do their hair and they'll put some mogra in their hair. So,
Yeah.
mogra is common. Patali, or the flower from where Patliputra got its name, that was very common, and so on. The interesting point that I would like to make here is that if you look at the flowers that are used in our pujas,
Mhm.
you will find that they're all indigenous Indian flowers. You will not find things like petunia or
Ah.
rose or gerberas or carnations used in our puja. Why do you think that is? Because our puja rituals are also a way of recording history, and they record what used to be. So the grains that you use, the flowers that you use, including the utensils that you use, copper, which was used, copper utensils were in use back then, they are all connecting you to your past. So that is one very interesting thing I sort of observed and I realized. And it's so interesting, because when we do our puja rituals, we don't really think of it as history.
Huh. Huh. Right. But like, did this discovery happen while writing, or you? Oh God, this is so interconnected. Our history has been always been there.
Yes,
It's just a matter
yes,
of perspective. And now I do understand that. Yeah, I really would love to quote this somewhere if this gets written. That your words, what you've chosen, are so nicely minced that our history is recorded in our rituals. Like, it's being carried
yes,
forward that way. Lovely. Okay, so that explains, and also you made the mention that today we do follow that culture, and I think there's an undeniable significance of South India when it comes to
yes,
the stories. So,
yeah,
do you agree to that? And if yes, would you elaborate on that?
yes. I totally agree. The ocean zone is as much the story of South as it is the story of Samudragupta. And I was very intrigued because here is a man who grew up in Magad, right?
Yeah.
So that is a landlocked place.
Mm, mm,
And yet he calls himself Samudragupta.
mm. Right. Like, yeah.
A man who has not seen the ocean every
Mm-hmm.
day found himself in the ocean zone.
Yeah.
And that was the starting point. Then that's how
Okay.
I started sort of looking at the story, that how would it be if I
Mm-hmm.
traced the journey of
Mm-hmm.
Prince Pacha and how he became uh, Samudragupta, Samrat Sri Samudragupta. And
Okay.
as part of that, I felt that his journey down to the south and his journey to the ocean's edge was critical. And that's how, this the southern part of the story comes together in that respect. And of course, Kanchi here again, I want to take a very short 2-3 minutes to explain this.
Please, please.
Kanchi at that time was a very powerful city.
Okay.
Again, it was powerful because it was rich. It was a trading center. Kanchi was known for its silks, for its textiles, as it is today. If you come to Chennai, you would go to Nalli or somewhere and buy yourself a Kanjivaram, right? So, Kanchi's this reputation as a place which would give you beautiful textiles was something that goes back millennia. Therefore, the Kanchi that I'm describing here is a Kanchi that is a very cosmopolitan city, very rich because of the trade, and also a city that does not really expect any kind of attacks because they are right at the tip of peninsular India, and they are so far away from the north. And so they don't really expect someone to come riding down the eastern coast and attack them.
Right.
And also, the other interesting thing that I mentioned here is that because Angai is a princess, I had great fun describing her jewelry and stuff like that. And I was very intrigued to find, and I'm going back a little bit here talking about this presence of history in our life. I was very intrigued to find that when you go for a South Indian wedding, a South Indian bride will wear what is known as temple jewelry.
Yes.
Now, if you look at temple jewelry, if you look at the patterns, the designs of temple jewelry, where do they come from? Do you know that the designs of temple jewelry comes from the Chola inscriptions in the southern temples, in temples like Gangaikonda, Cholapuram and others? Because the Chola rulers actually noted down, inscribed on temple walls that this particular necklace or earring or bracelet has been donated to the deity, and this is their design. So it is all written down. And for millennia, for more than 1,000 years, those designs are still in use. You go and see a South Indian bride, they will wear their temple jewelry. You go and see a South Indian bride, they will wear this gold belt. This gold belt is in Sangam poetry, in Mani Meklai and others, which are more than 2,000 years old. So you see this continuity, that those designs that you see normal South Indian brides wear to this day have been there for more than 1,000 years, more than 1,500 years. And so this continuity also made me bring this character, who would wear this kind of jewelry and would look resplendent, very beautiful, but would also be a warrior. She would be looking very feminine. She would be a warrior, like Durga.
Wow. What a depiction. And I think I would again say this, that it is present, it is scattered. There are like, how would I say, probably the pearls are all across the shore. Somebody just has to, get them together, weave them together. And that's how your book is. Like, when you're telling me, the fact that you're mentioning where you got them from, the fact that how it connects with what we've already been doing. Like, I have a co-worker, Sindhu ma'am, and she always speaks about the temple jewelry, and she has a very huge fascination for them. And now I would be showing off to her that, you know what, I know the history behind it. So I think this is what we do come across them. We do follow these traditions. We just don't know that it's a legacy given off by our ancestors, and probably we just have to understand. Probably we will not only value it more monetarily, but like I said last time also when I had a conversation with you, I changed the way I looked at restaurants. I changed the way I looked at kadi patta or tomato, because that's what you were speaking about. That at that point of time, some things weren't there. Some things had different significance altogether. So next time I'm seeing a temple jewelry, I know where it is coming from. Having said that, it brings me to the next question, because now we're on the part where it also follows religion. How did people follow religion back then? Was it Vishnu worship? Was it Skanda or the god of war? How was it?
The Gupta emperors were very devout Vaishnavites. They were worshippers of Vishnu.
Mhm.
And if you go to central India, you will find many, many beautiful rock cut sculptures of Varaha. Varaha is one of Vishnu's avatars. So
Mhm.
you have, of course, the Udayagiri cave. Varaha is the most well known, and that was done during the rule of Chandragupta Vikramaditya and his son Kumar Gupta. But there are many others. There's one beautiful Varaha in Madhya Pradesh's Narsinghpur district. There are many other examples of Gupta era depictions of
Mhm.
Varaha because they identified with the Varaha avatar of Vishnu. Also, if you look at their coins, you will
Mhm.
find that they are shown, the emperors are shown holding the Garuda Dwaja. Garuda Dwaja was the imperial, sort of uh, pennant, the symbol of their power. And this is something that I mentioned in the books as well. And that is why their war cry is Jai Garuda, because Garuda is Vishnu's Vahan, and so therefore their war cry is Jai Garuda.
Mhm.
Uh, Kartikeya or Skanda, of course, is the god of war, and there is one sequence in the book where you see that they are going to practice Silangam, but first they come and they pay their respects to Kartikeya, to the god of war, and then the fight starts. This again was very, very popular back then. There are references to it in Kalidasa's poetry, for instance, that before war people would go and pay their respects to the deity. Shiva worship was also very, very popular, particularly down south. I have not mentioned it, but Princess Angai uh, would have been a Shiva worshipper, could have been a Shiva worshipper. She's a fictional character though, but Shiva worship was very popular as well. And then you have the Nagas. The Nagas are a very strong element in the ocean zone. They are part of the conflict in the ocean zone. The Nagas, interestingly, were Naga worshippers. So they used to
Okay.
worship snakes. And
Oh.
Naga worship, there are plenty of temple inscriptions. If you go to central India, it's full of temple inscriptions going back to third, fourth, fifth century India, classical India, ancient India. So Naga worship was also very popular, and that is something again the book mentions. So what I'm trying to say is again you see that there is continuity. If you come to the south, you will find that there are different types. The Vishnu worshippers, the Ayers and the Ayangas, and the Vishnu worshippers, the Shiva worshippers, they will mark their forehead differently. So you have those traditions of Vishnu worship, Shiva worship, Shakti worship, Naga worship, all of those traditions are still alive in India today, and that's the beauty of our Sanatan Dharma.
You really read my mind because I was about to say that again there is a continuity. So this is really fascinating because whatever we are like listening, I think every little part when a person like anybody this plug I would want to say to people whoever have a quest for history. Now that is just one trilogy or a one book away. Just start with this because somebody also mentioned that you can read them as a standalone pieces only if you want to
Yeah.
fascinate and you want to satisfy your fascination and explore through. So, like you said, you have a lot for my audience to pick. You have a lot for people who, like, for an example, even at this point of time where I have not been consciously inclined towards this history, but still, I, by nature of the fact that our parents are very interested in literature and must have spoken some words here and there. I know Samudra Gupta, I know कि ठीक है ये भी होता है वो भी होता है. But today, when it's all coming together, I think this becomes more than just an experience of reading a book. It's like one page you're in the history, the other page you are in some other character, then there is something else. So this I can't finish this conversation without asking you few questions about you as an author. What what satisfies you the most? Like writing about all of these, what satisfies you the most? Because I know you're driven, I know that you enjoy, but What brings you that, yeah, this is why I write for? Please tell me.
So there are I would say there are three things. The first thing that is most satisfying is that, you know, history books tell history very badly. And this I keep saying this, because historians are doing their job. That's fine. That is an important part of our learning about our past. It's very important, very critical. But that kind of work, that kind of research is not very easily understood by lay people, people like you and me. So what I'm trying to do is I am trying to open a window to the past. I'm trying to tell you that, hey, listen, you can have a soft landing to,
Actually.
history, and you can look at history as a story. And once it becomes very interesting and you are gripped, you will start reading history books written by historians for fun. And you will
Right.
realize how fascinating our past is, So that is one part of it. I keep saying I'm a history evangelist. I'm a journalist. So I look at history like a journalist, like a story. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is every time a reader writes back and says, I have read your book and I like this about it, and it has encouraged me to read history, I am like, my job is done. That's, so, that's the other part. I am saying that my historical fiction books are not history. They are a window to history. Please read them. But then if you are interested, go and read history for fun. And then if you do that, then the connection that we have with our past is very special. That is something that we need to own. We need to get it back. We need to own it. We need to live it. So that's the second part of it. In the Gupta trilogy, Samudra Chandragupta, Vikramaditya, and Skandagupta are like that. Totally liberal men, very handsome, very powerful, very politically astute, but also romantic. A great sense of music, great sense of literature, all of that. And now, the character that I'm writing about now, my current work, is a queen. She's a medieval queen, and she is, I can only call her kick ass. She's a kick ass queen.
I so wanted you not to filter it. Right.
What's not to love? When you come across characters like this, their
Oh.
stories need to be told.
True, true, true. And I think this has been. There are certain words associate with the writer, and it becomes a part of their writing identity. So yes, in fact, I'll tell you to the extent that you have been living rent free in my brain. Yesterday, I was watching some random movie review by one of the celebrated critics, and they were complaining that the movies don't show. They use female characters as props, but they don't have their own story. And I
Right.
suddenly was back to our last conversation. I was like, you know what? Please just get Nandini ma'am to write a screenplay, because now that's identity of who I see you as a writer. That if I'm in for a book that you've written, or anything for that matter, even the conversation, because I can speak particularly for that, I knew that your characters are going to be something that I look up to, and I don't anymore have to complain कि यार female characters नहीं है. So I would rather have someone to say, you know what, I want to be this character, because this happens with the other books that we have,
Yes.
fictional books that we
Yes.
have. Like, I like this character, I like this series. For example, I follow series Suits. I want to be Jessica
Yeah.
Pearson. Probably now
Yeah.
I want to be someone like Kumar Devi, or
Uh-huh.
just now that I have options, I would be spoiled for choices and for all right reasons. So this is a part of your writing identity. I wanted to say this for the longest time.
You made my day. Thank you so much. I have been asked by some critics
Uh-huh.
why the central character in my book is not a woman.
Yeah.
And I said that, well, for the simple reason that I wanted to write about the three Gupta monarchs. And why did I want to write about them? And I will take just 1 minute to
Yeah,
explain.
please, please, ma'am.
because I feel that despite Gupta era being the golden age of India, somehow we have forgotten them.
Yeah.
Between, the Mauryas, Ashoka Maurya, and, Ashoka being the very symbol of the Indian state. The Ashok Chakra is in our flag, and the Ashok Stamba is the symbol of the Indian state, and so on. Between that and the popular obsession with Mughal India, which was also very glorious and all that, between these two obsessions, Mauryan India and Mughal India, the classical age seems to be forgotten. Or at very best, if you read history books for school children, they are like, let very quickly finish it off and, let us go on to other things. I don't know why that is so, because India's glory days, reached an absolute pinnacle under the Guptas. And these books are my attempt to bring the focus back on these emperors. That's why the books are about them. And that is also why I had these very, very strong female characters, some of whom were actually historical characters. I could have those female characters because the milieu allowed me to write those female characters. Because the milieu was like that. It was so sophisticated, so liberal, and such a glorious age that those women characters feel that they are part of that milieu. It doesn't sound out of place. So this is my way of bringing some of that focus back to the Gupta era.
I think the camaraderie between you and the history itself deserve a separate appreciation, because I can see how much it supports you and you have a particular way of telling it. I mean, I don't see history anymore as history, but I would rather see that you're the Cinderella of the story and it's the fairy godmother and you both are making things happen for all of us. It's a magical story.
It's such a lovely metaphor.
And I would want your cause to amplify. Let's just hope that this also takes, like I was also thinking last time when we finished the conversation, how amazing it would be if this diverses into the content which is consumed at large and in masses also. So let's just hope this amplifies. You keep on writing, please, about characters, fiction, history, whatever, because like I said, you've been living rent free in my brain, and I don't know, I find myself coming back to you. Also, I was thinking that day, when I was growing up, I don't know if you remember, there was this one channel, बहुत छोटे time के लिए it started, Imagine TV. To be very honest, it's just a little trivia. First historical show I remember as a child I was exposed to was about Chandragupta Maurya. I remembered, yeah, that's what. And I remember that there was a female character, there was one he shared friendship with, he was trained, he had a. So it's not like I was so happy that he just the one part that I know history, I was exposed to that. But ये मुझे ये भी याद है कि वो बंद हो गया, एंड मुझे ये भी याद है कि एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इंटरनेट बहुत थोड़े टाइम के लिए मिलता था. आई यूज्ड टू गो टू इंटरनेट कैफे टू सर्च एंड आई वाज लाइक ओके ये चैनल बंद हो गया. Next, I never found something coming back to it which celebrated the glory with that authenticity, which I can personally say as an experience. So that's what I'm saying. Last time you told me you changed how it would be, and I became an enthusiast. I went on and I could. Now I remember the sequences. By the way, I might mess the Mughal, hierarchy, but I won't mess this empire. So that's the kind of impact you've left. And at the end, when I have to conclude this, I would like to invite your what do you want to tell the audience? They're looking forward to your book, and I have personally read a lot of comments. People look forward to listen from you, not only read from you. And again, mentioning they look forward to listen to you. What do you have to tell them when they would see this?
All I have to say is that our past is alive and well. It is part of our dharma, and it is our job to know a little bit more about it. So start with historical fiction, and once you're hooked, go and read history for fun.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And at the last, I just want to say that someone told to me that the easiest way to make someone fall in love with you, be it a god, beast, or human, would be to have a great conversation with them. Consider me falling in love with you every time we have the conversation. So that's there.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. This was such fun. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, ma'am. Thank you. That was
Namaskar.
really nice.
Welcome to Rise Sony Group, a vision beyond.